Hello, I'm Mark Menezes. I'm President and CEO of the United States Energy Association. And today we're pleased to bring you our very first episode of USEA's new podcast, the Energy Stakeholder. And we're delighted today uh, that Stephen Perkins of the American Conservation Coalition is our first guest. Stephen is the Chief Operating Officer of ACC, and he oversees the organization's national operations and coordinates strategy among its grassroots, grass tops, communications, and administrative departments. Stephen, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be the first guest and really appreciate the work y'all do.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, the work that the ACC has been doing really has been quite fascinating in the energy space. I know you're a broad organization, but focusing on energy, many people are talking about the Energy Freedom Tour that you all have. Can you spend a few minutes telling us what is this tour and how do you describe energy freedom?
Sure. Yeah. So the tour is going to college campuses across the country and really sharing what does the future of energy look like with the ultimate goal of getting young people involved and engaged in that future, right? Showing them what do careers look like? What are we on the verge of doing in this country in the energy sector? And so we kicked it off with Secretary of Energy Chris Wright, and then we had our follow-up at Stanford with Secretary of Interior Doug Burgum, both of which we're really excited about being in the administration. And that's really what this was born out of, is we said, okay, the administration has put some great, really great people for energy abundance in positions of influence. Let's show them off. Let's let them give their ideas out to the public, and particularly young people who as we work as a youth organization, young people they're ready to build things. They're ready to be involved in the future. And they're just looking for an opening. They're looking for ways to do that, ways that they can make a difference. And so the tour is about going around to these college campuses, connecting with young people, getting them jobs, at the very least, leads for jobs or ideas for jobs, and widening the energy sector and the talent pool that the energy sector will have going into the next decade.
That sounds like quite a program that you have in place. I recall when I was, deputy secretary over the Department of Energy, we had an effort underway to try to make energy cool. So, for example, in the nuclear space,
Yeah.
it was let's make nuclear cool again was one of our things. We tried to identify centers of excellence at universities with the hopes, to engender a spark of interest in um, the curiosity of the student, right, and to see how the role energy plays and how you might be able to be a future leader in that. And I'm curious when you go, um, do you find that you attract students that are interested more in energy or climate or environmental issues, or is there a mix? Can you describe sort of what you see when you go to the campuses?
There's a really good mix. I think that, the percentage of students who are really passionate about energy is probably smaller than we would like. But what is a leading issue for young people, Gen Z, is conservation and climate and the environment in that broad sense. They want to know that the job they're going to be in is not going to be a detriment to those things, and they would love to be involved in improving the environment and stewarding our planet in a better way. And so we find a wide variety of people, and the message that we send to them is whether you're an engineering student or whether you are a political science student or an English student, there's a space for you in the energy industry. There's a space for you in the future of the energy industry. And that's been an exciting message for people. And I think it also helps the speakers we brought in have had a diverse background. They don't strictly come from the energy world, and yet somehow they've ended up engaged in it. And so that helps students, I think, see themselves in these leaders and innovators and drivers of the energy future.
And of course, today we have issues that frankly we didn't have to deal with, just two administrations ago, and that is now the sudden huge growth in electricity demand that's
Mm,
driven by, I'm sure, what these students definitely identify with, and that is growing AI use, right?
sure.
The hyperscalers, the new companies that they're all familiar with, right? The Googles, the Metas, et cetera.
Yeah.
Um, do you get the sense that they see sort of a new era in energy? And, do you sense that they want to be part of the solution of making sure that we have sufficient energy?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Energy demand has been a conversation popping up among sort of the common person, right? Right, the layman, the person who's not involved in energy, because it is becoming more and more at the national, the front of national news. Um, I personally, and I know ACC, we're very bullish and optimistic about technology and innovation being able to solve many of our environment challenges. And we're really excited about the future that AI brings. A lot of organizations, a lot of voices in the energy, environment, climate space are sort of demonizing AI right now, or their data centers and the resources that they use up. But what you've seen is companies, for example, Amazon that is commissioning 12 small modular reactors to power some of their data centers. Microsoft is doing the same, Google and whatnot. What we're seeing is a lot of these organizations in our space of energy and climate are frankly demonizing technologies like AI. They're demonizing the rapid expansion of data centers. When you talk to young people, they're really excited about what those things bring. However, they're excited about the innovation that's going to come and obviously makes our lives easier and will continue to. And so our message is, hey, we don't have to demonize these things. We don't have to be scared of it. We can actually use these new technologies to to make it more efficient, and we can use these new technologies to solve many of our climate and environment issues. And that's a message that really resonates with students, is that there is reason to be optimistic. There are benefits to this new technology that far outweigh some of the what we see as temporary challenges that we're going to have to figure out. But throughout history, technology has always been the leading solution to a lot of humanity's issues, and so we're definitely very bullish about that.
Well, and again, the meaning um, of Energy Freedom Tour, is it to convey that the U.S. should develop its own energy sources to be a free country, or is it to like free up our various sources of energy, if you will, to meet the increased needs for a growing economy, a better future, as you described, with this increased use of AI.
It's all of the above, which is also how we explain, or how we communicate our approach to an energy mix and an energy grid. We want all of the above energy. It's important for a number of reasons. Number one, I was talking on another show, just as you would want a diversified portfolio for your investments, you want a diversified energy grid. Where I am in Texas, we're probably one of the best examples of a state that is traditionally oil and gas, but we also lead in wind and solar and battery storage, and we're moving more toward nuclear and hydro and all those things. That's really exciting. That needs to be scaled on a national level. And the reason why is because number one, we don't want to be reliant on other countries for our energy. We've seen the negative effects of being in that position with recent the war in Eastern Europe and how reliant we are on China and other countries for things like solar panels, critical minerals, really important stuff for our future and for technology. But we also think that when you have all the above energy, at the end of the day, what really matters is, does the consumer have cheaper industry? and we believe prosperity comes from energy abundance. So we need to make a lot of energy. We need to make it at an affordable price so that these technologies can scale, but also so that American families can live and be prosperous and not have to worry about the energy bill at the end of the month. So it has some big picture implications, but also some really important day-to-day livelihood implications as well.
I mean, the fascinating thing from an energy perspective is these hyperscalers and these new companies. NVIDIA, I think, just became the first $5 trillion
Yeah.
company in market cap. You know, without electricity, these companies really wouldn't exist, hardly.
Hmm.
Right, right. They need electricity. They need electricity, and electricity is what drives the data centers, for AI. So the whole cloud, couldn't exist but for electricity. And it sounds as though the students are recognizing this and they want to be part of a group that says, well, look, let's make sure we have this energy so we can enjoy economic prosperity and futures for all of us. And they probably appreciate the greater value of AI than, maybe others that are not Gen
Yeah.
Zers, right? That said, you probably don't get too far along in the conversation when people have to realize it's very difficult to build infrastructure in the United States. Has that become an issue? Have students raised that concern, or in your conversations, have that been an issue that has been discussed?
A lot of what we do is educate that very fact, and why it is so difficult to build things. I think, Gen Z, what they get frustrated by broadly is just an inability to act from the government. They feel like people, particularly the government, isn't doing the things that we all very clearly know they need to be doing. And when you think about, it's interesting, you talk about companies and how energy is becoming such an important part of it. Think about supply chain, right? It used to be that, oh, the company that controlled the process of steel or whatever their main component was, that was going to be the most competitive company. Nowadays, the most important component of the supply chain is energy. And you're right, there are barriers in the way to building new energy projects, clean energy projects. So permitting reform, frankly, if you talk to a lot of students about permitting reform, if you say, what is permitting? Or, what are we trying to do through permitting reform? I don't think a lot of them know, but our purposes say, okay, so permitting is what allows these companies to actually build. You have to go out and get a permit. You can't just wake up one day and decide you want to do it. And permitting reform is what's needed at the federal level, some state level as well, but largely at the federal level, to make it easier to where it doesn't take over a decade to build a nuclear power plant, for example, and it doesn't take billions just in the permitting and sort of initial project before you even break ground. That shouldn't be the way that it is in a country that, for much of our history, has pride ourselves on building really cool big things very quickly, right? We won the space race, we built some massive structures, the skyscraper, all that stuff we did because the government was not getting in the way and in fact was an active participant in those moonshot programs. And so when we talk with students and the question does come up, well, this all makes sense. Why isn't it being done? Why isn't it being built as quickly? The answer is you got to tell your representative that it's time to pass permitting reform. I remember when permitting reform, around, obviously it's been talked about for a while, but the first Trump administration, they were talking about getting permitting reform done. And it just hasn't happened at the scale that we need it to. Unfortunately, there's a lot of political games that get played there. But that is between that and building out our transmission to actually bring power to areas of population. That is the most important step. That if I had one wish from a genie, that's what I would want passed, tomorrow.
Yeah, get back to actually building things in the
That's
U.S.
right. Yeah.
And it's and of course the students. You hope you can engender that enthusiasm. They don't have the decadal experience that some of us have, where our system today of permitting really is in part driven by the fact that we haven't had growth in this country for the need for energy. And and mostly everybody has access to energy in the United
Mhm.
States. I mean, if you want it, you can get access to it.
Yeah.
And hopefully at a price, it's affordable and of course that's reliable. We've discovered we might not be able to meet the needs when there's a peak load. But what's new? What's new? And I doubt that many of those students experienced it, is this real palpable sense of we need more energy now. For us
Mhm.
to be that country that I think these students and us, we all want to be part of, is we've got to change the way we've been doing it over. We've had the luxury to be able to sort of yawn if one natural, gas line wasn't built, or say, well, another interstate, uh, electric transmission system isn't built. Oh, we can go build load here and there, and we kind of work through it. But
Yeah.
it's in part because there is no big demand that's driving this, and I think it sounds as though the students recognize that, and they're motivated now to be part of that solution to overcome, some of those past views of how things have sort of just become obdurated or just, because there's really no urgency, right? There really isn't, but there is today.
Right. And there's a real entrepreneurial, um, let's get it done mindset among, Gen Z, right? That's what, whatever criticism you may have, I think they're going to be the generation to truly pull up the bootstraps, take the tools and build. Um, and that's really exciting. And there's so many companies out there that are embodying that same spirit, right? So many companies that even without, or even while, they're not waiting on government to get out of the way. They're saying, well, permitting process is not fun right now. We're still going to go through it, and we're still going to try and build these things. It's also great to see bigger companies that have a little more leverage and resources, Amazon, Microsoft, and the like, they are taking it upon themselves to recommission nuclear sites, build new nuclear facilities to power a lot of the tech work they do. So it's a really exciting time in our country, despite all of the issues that we have. It's an exciting time because things are starting to get built, and I think Gen Z is going to be the generation to finish those major projects.
Oh, that's great news. So I want to follow up with the ACC pulse, if you will, with the youth of today. I understand that ACC conducted a poll in 2024 that um, has basically described that group is feeling as though America is on the wrong track. Can you talk a little bit about what your survey asked and what it found?
Sure. So it was a pretty broad survey about, generational views on energy and conservation and how these things are not just, do you agree with the concepts, but how do you see them being implemented in our country? And you're right, there is a lot of frustration, I would say, about just sort of, the action that needs to be taken that isn't being taken, kind of what we were talking about earlier. But what we also found is respondents recognized the important role that the energy industry plays right now and would play into the future. They recognized the economic opportunity that was there, the job, career opportunity that was there. And I think, again, going back to that spirit of let's get this done, let's get to work. Our respondents wanted to see more action from the federal government. They wanted to see innovation easier to deploy, and they wanted to see a better submission to this idea of all the above energy. We have found that young conservatives in particular overwhelmingly embrace clean energy. A lot of them come from towns now that have been revitalized by clean energy projects. I know here in Texas and across the country, there are many towns that wind, solar, and the like provide their communities a new lifeline. Whereas, a decade ago, it looked like they were going to be on the decline. You have coal towns that are now looking toward a future of being nuclear towns. And so there's excitement, but there's also frustration at a lack of action and a lack of bold leadership.
Yeah, it reminds me. So I teach a course at Georgetown Law School on energy, and we typically start the class, and you have a lot of folks that want to embrace certain types of, energy, and it's an educational process. And we ask the students to evaluate, whatever solution that they may propose to address these energy needs that they need to factor in, the technological um, barriers that might exist if you wish to propose a certain type of source, for example, or opportunities for new technologies. The economics are involved because, to be sure, no policy that's going to cause energy cost to be out of reach is not going to be one that the policymakers are going to embrace, right? The political realities of getting certain things, done, and of course, since it's a law school, it's always, what legal issues might arise. But
Yeah.
it's interesting at the beginning of the class, students might have fairly firmly held views that. They might say, well, I want 100% nuclear, I want 100% renewables, or this or that. Well, by the end of the class, they realize it isn't all of the above,
Hmm.
integrated nature of the energy systems. And you get these wonderful analytical papers that say, how can we solve these problems? Would they address each of those issues? And you really can just see sort of the evolution of the student and the professor, by going through that process. And I think when you do deliberative polling, certainly in the energy space, I think you see that. You see people coming in and they have some preconceived notions about energy or what it could be. But by the time you have these conversations, they're more fully informed and they embrace a lot of solutions and they want to be part of the solution as opposed to, saying not this and only that. Has that been the experience of ACC?
That nuance is, I mean, first of all, I think that should be a required course at all universities. That sounds awesome. Like going through that exercise of sort of reality checking, maybe your preconceived notions is great. I do think that is the benefit. We talked about the energy demand that we're seeing now has really sort of forced people to pay attention to this and forced movement in this industry, sort of a godsend in that way. I think that so many young people have grown up with such tense debates, whether it's in the media or even within their own families, about energy, about renewables, about what these things look like and what role the government plays in it. But truly, the more that you do your own research, the more that you speak with people and experience it for yourself, you do start to realize, okay, this is not a black and white picture. There's a lot of gray areas. There's a lot of variance in between them. And I find not that everyone uh, is persuaded always by the data, but show people the data of states that embrace an all of the above energy stance, and you will see lower costs for consumers. You will see fewer blackouts and downtimes. You will see stronger grid reliability. And generally, you'll see more industry, more opportunity, more jobs. Because to your point, energy is becoming the driver of many industries now. And so if you don't have it, or if it's in a state where energy is really overregulated or overprescribed for a certain way, then naturally you're going to see people leave that state and go to others. We've enjoyed that in Texas. A lot of companies, a lot of tech companies have come
Oh,
here from California because they know that there's more energy abundance here. So yes, I think you're right to put it short. That once people get out there and realize these things, it's really eye-opening.
well, Stephen, so on that, so for a college student or young professional that's listening, What is the single most effective action you think that they can take today to support permitting reform and accelerate some of these energy projects?
You know, one of the biggest um, one of the biggest under communicated things that anyone can do at any time is to be in contact with their elected officials. It sounds cliche. And maybe right now elected officials have a little more that they're dealing with given the shutdown. But once we get past the shutdown, like you should reach out to them and say, I'm a young person in your district. I care about my future, and energy is a big part of that. Please prioritize permitting reform and transmission and embracing an all the above energy approach. We've ran campaigns where we've delivered tens of thousands of those kinds of emails and phone calls to offices, and they have moved the needle. Earlier this year, during the reconciliation package, where many of these clean energy credits and incentives were on the chopping block, we were able to save many of them. We were able to structure that in a way where our progress is not undermined as a country now. And that was because of our membership standing up, speaking up. And so, really, I would encourage people don't underestimate the power of voicing your opinion to your elected official. It's okay to be an annoyance to them because they're elected to hear from you. And then the other thing I would just encourage everyone to find your place. If you care about this, find your place in the energy future, whether that is a career in it, whether that is getting involved with ACC or many other organizations in our space that advocate for the policies that we feel will make that future possible. Get involved in some way, shape, or form, even if it feels very minimal to you. It makes a huge difference.
Well, thank you, Stephen. This has been a delightful conversation with you, and I'm sure our listeners will enjoy it. It was a pleasure hearing about what ACC has been doing and your mission. And we do want to thank our listeners for joining us and wherever you stream your podcasts. You can learn more about USEA and our work to advance global prosperity and energy security by convening experts across policy, technology, and finance to drive affordable, reliable energy solutions while partnering internationally to expand access to U.S. energy resources and technology. Thank you, Stephen, and appreciate the conversation today.
Thank you, Mark.